He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're just a mistake we raised. You deserve nothing." Then he handed everything to my brother while the whole family clapped. But they didn't know what I had already done behind their backs. They didn't know who was about to walk into that room, and they had no idea what the lawyer was holding in his hands. Before we reveal the truth, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you believe that every underdog deserves a comeback. I was the invisible one. My name's Isla, and in my family I was always treated like background noise. My dad ran a successful business empire, and everyone knew my brother Jake would inherit it all. He was the golden boy, charming, loud, confident. And me? I was just the girl who studied too much and smiled too little. At the family gathering for Dad's 65th birthday, the living room was filled with relatives, lawyers, cake, and tension. Dad stood up, tapped his glass, and said, "Today, I want to make an announcement about the future of our legacy." I already knew what was coming, but I wasn't prepared for the cruelty in his tone. He smiled and said, "Jake, my son, the future CEO, you've earned it." Everyone clapped. Then he turned to me and added, "And Isla, well, maybe one day you'll find something you're good at." Maybe. People laughed. Even my aunt whispered, "She should be grateful we even invited her." It stung, but I stayed quiet because they didn't know the truth. They didn't know that for the past 5 years, I'd been building my own company in silence. They didn't know I had developed a revolutionary logistics AI that had just been acquired by Amazon. They didn't know I wasn't the one left behind. I was the one already 10 steps ahead. But I wasn't here to boast. I was here because Dad's lawyer had called me a week ago with a very different version of the will. One that no one else in the room had seen yet, one that had been updated and signed in secret. And now, as Dad proudly handed Jake the ceremonial key to the company, the lawyer stood up quietly and said, "I believe there's something you all need to hear." Everyone turned. Confusion etched Jake's face. Dad's smile froze. The lawyer unfolded the paper and the entire room went silent. The lawyer cleared his throat and said, "This document was signed 3 months ago by Mr. Richard Walker, your father." The room froze. Dad's eyes widened. "What document? I didn't authorize anything." But the lawyer didn't flinch. "It was signed in private under full legal protocol and witnessed by your personal attorney. It is legally binding." Jake snatched the paper and scanned it. His face turned ghost white. "This has to be a joke," he muttered. But it wasn't, because the document said the unimaginable. The entire estate, company, and assets were to be transferred to Isla. Me. Everyone went silent except my mother, who gasped, "Isla? But she's just... Just what?" I finally spoke, my voice calm but firm. "Just the daughter you ignored. Just the mistake he raised." For the first time in my life they listened. The lawyer continued. "Mr. Walker stated that the rightful heir would be the one who proves themselves through character, work ethic, and independent success." Jake exploded. "This is insane. I've worked at Dad's side for 10 years. I went to Ivy League schools. I made sacrifices." I looked at him. "You attended board meetings hungover. You ran our New York office into losses. You used our family name to party. I built something real, quietly." But the biggest blow hadn't landed yet. The lawyer turned one last page and said, "And finally, there's a transfer record. 3 months ago, Mr. Walker sold 49% of his company stock to an outside firm owned by Miss Isla Walker." The room erupted. "You bought half the company?" my cousin screamed. I nodded. "With money I earned without anyone's help." Dad stood up, face red. "You manipulated me." "No," I said. "I gave you the paperwork during your hospital stay. You asked me to manage it for you. I didn't manipulate you. I saved you from going bankrupt. You just didn't bother reading what you signed." People whispered. Some laughed awkwardly. Others sat frozen, stunned. Jake looked like he might cry. But the best part, I wasn't done yet because they didn't know who my business partner was. They didn't know why I really came here tonight. And they had no idea what I was about to announce next. The chandelier lights flickered slightly as the tension thickened. I could feel every eye drilling into me, but I didn't flinch. I slowly reached into my purse and pulled out a folded envelope. "Since everyone's here," I said calmly, "I think it's the perfect time to introduce you all to the newest partner in the company." Dad scoffed. Partner? This is getting ridiculous. Who would even work with you? I smiled and handed the envelope to the lawyer, who opened it and read aloud. This letter confirms that Isla Walker has entered into a full acquisition partnership with Orion Tech Industries as of last week. Gasps rippled through the room. Uncle Drew nearly choked on his drink. Orion Tech? That's one of the biggest investors on the East Coast. Jake jumped up. That's impossible. They don't even deal with small startups. They didn't, I replied, until they saw mine. Until they ran the numbers. Until they realized I built a back-end system that could revolutionize their entire logistics department. They offered a deal I couldn't refuse. And now Orion owns a majority stake in this company. Dad's face drained of color. You brought outsiders into our family business? He growled. No, I said coldly. I brought leadership, something this company hasn't had in a long time. Aunt Melinda stood up, desperate. But what about family blood, loyalty? I looked around the room. Where was that loyalty? When I needed support in college, when I pitched ideas and got laughed at, when I asked to be heard and was told to stay quiet. Silence. You all chose Jake. You trained him, pampered him, protected him, and he still failed. Jake slammed his hand on the table. This is war, Isla. I didn't blink. No, Jake. This is justice. But just when I thought the drama had peaked, the front door creaked open and in walked Eli Morgan, the CEO of Orion Tech himself. The entire room fell silent. Eli smiled. Evening. Sorry I'm late, but I figured I'd come congratulate our new CEO in person. Everyone looked at him, then at me. Dad stumbled back into his chair. Jake sat down in shock. But Eli wasn't done. Oh, and Isla. Should we tell them about the merger terms? Or do you want to do the honors? I took a deep breath because what I was about to say would change everything. The air thickened as I stepped beside Eli. I could hear nothing but the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional shifting of stunned family members in their seats. Every face in that room had gone pale, drained of the smug confidence they wore when they thought I was a failure. I turned to Eli, then back to the family. You all wanted an announcement. Here it is. I lifted my chin and said it loud and clear. The merger between Orion Tech and Walker Enterprises is complete. The combined entity will be called Orion Walker Holdings, and I've been appointed as the CEO. It hit them like a hammer. Jake whispered. No, she can't. Dad leaned forward, grasping at straws. You tricked me into this. You, Eli, stepped in. Mr. Walker, let me make something clear. Your daughter didn't trick anyone. She negotiated with brilliance, handled the legal side flawlessly, and brought value we couldn't ignore. You underestimated her. We didn't. You could hear a pin drop. I looked at my father, the man who once told me I'd never be more than someone's secretary. The man who had thrown money and mentorship at Jake but barely acknowledged my existence. You told me I didn't belong in boardrooms, I said. You told me I was soft, emotional, not sharp enough for business. But guess what? I turned those very emotions into power. Every time you ignored me, mocked me, or told me I'd amount to nothing, I took that pain and built something. My mother shook her head, tears forming. We didn't know you were hurting like that. You didn't want to know, I replied, because caring about me didn't fit your narrative. I was the quiet one, the safe one, the one who wouldn't fight back. Until now. Aunt Melinda tried to lighten the mood, her voice fake sweet. But honey, now that you're successful, maybe we can be a real family again. I laughed under my breath. You only say that now that I'm in power. When I was nothing to you, you treated me like a ghost. You fed Jake my ideas. You left me out of vacations. You even hid Grandma's inheritance from me. That last line landed hard. Several heads turned sharply. What inheritance? Jake blurted. I pulled out a second document. The one Grandma left for me, all $2.5 million of it. But Dad redirected it to cover family expenses, remember? Dad's jaw tightened. The lawyer stepped in. That was illegal, by the way. And now that Isla is CEO, she has every right to audit past financials. That includes family-held funds. Jake looked like he'd swallowed glass, but I wasn't done. Starting tomorrow, there will be changes, I announced. Nepotism ends here. Every executive will go through performance review. If you can't prove your value, you're out. You're firing us? Uncle Drew said in disbelief. No, I said coolly. I'm giving you the same chance I never had, to earn your place. The energy in the room shifted. The family that once towered over me now looked small, fragile, exposed. Their power was crumbling, not because I took it, but because they never built anything to hold it up. And then, just as I was about to end the night, my father did something none of us expected. He stood, walked toward me, and looked me in the eyes. You win, he muttered. You always had it in you. I was too blind to see it. I stared at him, waiting for the sarcasm, the punchline. But it never came. Instead, he walked out of the room, quietly. Jake followed him, fists clenched, jaw tight, still refusing to accept what just happened. And the rest of the family sat in awkward silence as Eli and I left the room with the keys to the empire in my hands. But what they didn't know was that this wasn't the end. Because there was one final surprise they weren't ready for. 4 weeks later, the headlines hit the business world like a storm. Former CEO's daughter overtakes family empire, announces billion-dollar tech pivot. The news spread fast. Interviews, podcast requests, LinkedIn articles. Suddenly, the same people who once ignored me were begging to hear my story. But I didn't care about attention. I had something bigger in mind. Inside the newly renovated Orion Walker building, I stood before a packed auditorium of shareholders, executives, and employees. This wasn't just a corporate meeting. It was a full-circle moment. I took a deep breath and began. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter. For too long, this company thrived on old money, old habits, and old minds. That ends now. We are evolving, not just in technology, but in culture, integrity, and leadership. The crowd erupted in applause. I paused, letting the noise fade. Then added, but before we move forward, I have one last thing to reveal. Something my family tried to bury. The room leaned in. Even Eli looked over, curious. 15 years ago, I pitched a project to my father. A tech-based supply chain model. He laughed and said it was childish. I submitted the same idea anonymously to an incubator. It won. I tapped the screen behind me. A slide popped up. Walker AI Logistics, launching this fall. Gasps. Cheers. Phones lit up. It was the very concept they had mocked. Now reborn under my name, with my team. I continued. This win is for every underdog who was told they weren't enough. For every quiet thinker, every overlooked genius. Let today be proof that being underestimated is your greatest weapon. After the event, I returned to my office where a sealed envelope sat on my desk. No name. Just my initials. Inside, a handwritten note from my father. Isla, I read the article. I watched the interview. And for once, I listened. I may not have been the father you deserved, but I see you now. I'm proud of you. I stared at the words, unsure whether to cry, laugh, or feel nothing at all. Because the truth is, forgiveness doesn't always come wrapped in a bow. Sometimes it comes too late, and sometimes it doesn't matter. I stood by the window, watching the city that once felt too big for me. Now it was mine. They tried to bury me, but I wasn't a seed. I was the storm, and this was just the beginning.